Women of wisdom, everyone. Today I'm blessed enough to have Dawn with me on the podcast, and what we're going to talk about is her book, and then we're going to talk about the life in education, which for those of you who do not know, I am an educator myself. So this is something going to be an interesting little conversation here because Don and I come from the exact same background. I was laughing at a book title when I read it this morning. It's called Don't Sniff the Glue, Educator's Perspective. And I want to ask her, before we get into the baseline questions, what glue is Dawn talking about? What glue are you talking about?
Well, this is actually an interesting, analogy because this is legitimately glue. So I was in the art store one day, or the craft store at the beginning of the school year, when you can actually afford to get school supplies. And we are insane.
Yes.
Teachers are absolutely crazy because what we'll do is we will go to every single store and we'll go 17 times because the limit is 3, right? And so when I do that, I'll go to all the stores, I'll have the coupons and the sales, and I will find a teenager who looks like they could be in my class, and I'll say, listen, let's just cut to the chase. I live around the corner, and I'm going to come back 110 times to get the limit 5, or you could just sell me everything I want now, and you never have to look at my ugly face again. And teens always want to be helpful, so they will do that for me. But in this particular situation, I was looking for some things in one of the larger craft stores, and these 2 women were frantic, and they're looking around, and they have this paper with them, and they're looking for something, and one of them says that she's looking for glue, and I said, well, I mean, there's the Sears Tower of 5-cent glue next to us, one of those doorbusters, like if you pull one, the entire tower will fall, and there's so darn much glue in this store, like how could you not see it right there? Like they made a big Lego guy out of this glue.
Exactly. Oh,
And so I
exactly.
told her, and I'm like, there's some glue. And she's like, no. She wants us to have this glue. And I immediately knew what she meant. Like, how you have the teacher,
Yeah, the
teacher
teacher
supervisor.
that's
And this
the
person
school
hasn't been
list.
in the classroom in a long time. And like, they give you these lists, and you can't vary from this list.
Very
And
close.
so
It
instead of the
has to
5,
be Elmer's glue. It
oh,
has to be Elmer's glue or epoxy glue or what.
no, it wasn't Elmer's. See, you are an elementary person, so you might have a handle on this, but definitely Elmer's was on sale. And so I'm like, there's Elmer's glue here. No, it has to be this glue. And this glue was like $7 a bottle. Like this was like the champagne of glues. I don't know what kid, you can eat Elmer's and it's totally safe. And so I looked at her. She's like, no, she said, we need this glue. And I just backed off. I said, listen, someday you're going to have your own classroom and you will be right. So just, stick with
Yes.
it and be right. And that was the glue.
Yes. Oh, oh, oh. I was laughing hysterically when I read the book title. I'm like, and as my listeners know by now, I'm laughing as I give this interview because for those of you who have not seen a back to school list and do not know what Dawn and I are talking about, it's this huge list with about 15 items. And if you're lucky, they send it to you in June. But not all the time do they send it to you in June. They probably send it to you in August when they're making their first lesson plans. So then you have to take your kids or take yourself to Best Buy or Michael's to find all the stuff on the back to school list. And it's horrible. It's actually horrible because it's what teachers expect of their parents and their students is
Well, Well, this was even worse because it was the student teacher supervisor. So these ladies wanted to be teachers. They already weren't making any money. And then the person responsible for, teaching them how to teach was making them buy all this stuff for
Oh
their
my.
classes. So I just felt for these poor girls. Like they probably can't even afford ramen because they're college kids.
Yeah.
And then you're making them buy like all this stuff. So I felt bad. I myself, I've stopped shopping for my classroom years ago, and no kid ever loved me less, I found. And that was just, we shouldn't go broke for our jobs. Our jobs should pay us enough to eat dinner and go out to the movies once in a while. And
Exactly. And so why did you get in the teaching field to begin with?
well, you're not going to believe me, and if you really need to cut this short after this story, I don't blame you. But so I was working in insurance, and I heard a voice in my cube, and this is true. I heard this voice, and I've heard it a couple times since. And no, I don't drink, and I'm very I'm the most boring person you know, and so I heard this voice, and a ray of sunshine came into my cube. Now, the ray of sunshine I can explain because I was by the window, but the voice, like, you have to quit and teach. I heard that, and I thought, well, okay, when you hear voices, you need to do something. Either, go and get help, or maybe it's like really is God telling you what to do, and you should listen. So I started applying to grad schools and ended up getting into grad school, walking into my boss and saying, I have great news, but I'm going to need a schedule change. So, it was that I was transitioning, and he was the best boss in the world. He knew it was the right job for me. And really, I had been teaching athletics for a while, and I thought, I love working with people in this capacity, and I'm going to save the world. That's what I'm going to do. And I don't know that I have saved the world, but I gave it the old college try. So,
Yes. Yes. I am literally giving it the old college try myself too. But at the same time, oh man, we are not. People say, when you have patience of a saint, they probably say, Don, you have patience of a saint. I'm like, look at it when you're on the outside. You know we have patience of a saint. When you're on the inside, oh, it's a completely different story. Yeah,
absolutely, no,
it's
it
a
is.
completely different story. And so, what would be the best advice for, because it's the holiday season coming up, and what would be the best advice for educators and parents to get along nicely during the holiday extravaganzas that schools put on?
Are you talking about the holidays? This is a really interesting question, especially given situations in the world today. Like I am in Rhode Island, and Rhode Island is a majority Christian state. So everything is about Christmas. We've had our controversy about whether it's going to be a Christmas tree or a holiday tree at the state level in the past, and now people are getting more respectful. But I actually try and teach these things because my students oftentimes are so not exposed to other faiths and religions and celebrations that this is something I teach high school, so I'll bring these conversations to the forefront and really recognize a lot of holidays, and sometimes for certain students it's not easy because they're really entrenched in their religion, but at no time like today it's essential. We were talking about Islam today, and somebody said, well, I respect this, but their God, I'm like, nothing, their God, nothing. It's the same God. So you speak Spanish. If I say Jesus Cristo or Jesus Christ, same dude, same guy, your hero. Now,
Yes.
if I say Allah, then I'm speaking of that's still God.
Yeah.
Just a different aspect of belief and a different book, but pretty
And different
related.
book.
And so getting people, and even Judaism, getting people to understand some of those religions, or even some of the minority Christian religions, such as Jehovah's Witness, we have students who don't celebrate, and helping other students to be respectful of why those beliefs exist. And they're all really, really, really valid beliefs to get students working together on tolerance. So I do like to talk about those things, especially around the holidays.
Well, okay, that leads me to my next question, because I I I teach slash went to school with primarily the Jewish population. Well, the Jewish population, let's just say they think that everything revolves around them, basically. And it's like one of all big controversies right now in Aspen is whether to let the kids have the 8 days of Hanukkah off and not go to school. And I'm like, yeah.
Well, I say yes, and so I'm always joking that I'm going to convert to everybody's religion for their best holidays. And one thing about me is I lived in Russia, and when I lived in Russia, I came back and I was working with the Jewish community centers. So I'll often joke that I'm an honorary Jew. And so, I have to say my languages are bad these days and such. But what I found is, first of all, even religious or secular, if you want to go on a vacation or take that time with your family, I'm all for it. Like, I do not speak for all teachers here because I know teachers feel like students should be in the classroom. But I think that you should go take your week off, your 8 days, your vacation, your 2 weeks. And we have blended learning. We have computers. We have laptops. So I don't really you don't need to see my ugly face to be educated. And whether that's for a religious holiday or situation, or even you just need family time, sometimes you do need that. And, I had a student who went to South Africa and was nervous about missing my class. I'm like, South Africa? Me talking for an hour. South Africa? Go to South Africa, like you were talking about the Bahamas in your book. Like, how could I, as an educator, make you miss that? It just would be wrong, I think.
Well, Dawn is bringing up, and Dawn, I know she will bring up this. For those of you who do not know, I wrote my original book, which Dawn is now talking about, I Come a Win. I spent the majority of my holidays in the Bahamas. So, and I remember when I was in college the first time around, now I'm in college the second time around, trying to get a PhD in special education, and I remember lugging my laptop and sitting on Eastern Standard Time and doing my homework because the teacher said to me, and I'm not kidding, she goes, I'll make you get an F in the class if you don't attend class. And I'm like, excuse me? I have a laptop. I have access. I can bring your book with me and have someone physically read me the book. Read. Sit with me. It's not like I don't have internet access in the Bahamas. Or it's not like we don't have internet access all over the planet now. Practically on the United flights they have internet access. And so that being said, because parents want their kids to get a good grade and to be a high performer in a holiday performance, how would you recommend that teachers and parents get along nicely?
I think that, this has been easy enough for me because I really, I joke with my students. I said, I'm old and your parents are old, so our job is to stop you from having fun, and your job is to try and get away with things. And so, but really, the truth of the matter is we're all on the same team to get these kids doing something amazing. And so, from my perspective, I kind of want to build that relationship with a kid and see what's your passion, what can I help you do, what introductions can I make, what material can I give to you. And then the parent obviously wants the grades to be good. I don't really care so much about grades. I care about content and really passion. So my grades are, some would say I'm an easier grader, but I'll just let them redo things until they master the skill. So for me, if I'm communicating with a parent, if a parent says, "Oh, I'm sorry, my daughter's going on vacation," I have a note on my in my email just this morning, and I said, "Go have fun." what I can do is we have so much technology. I can put the material on Google Classroom. Students can email me. We can talk. Like, I'm thinking about my own self. I get paid, I consult and I work for tech companies and for people remotely. And it's all by Skype or it's all via email or Google Docs. We collaborate. So if we set those expectations up with students, it doesn't matter if you're sitting with me or if you're in Pennsylvania or if you're in California, wherever you need to be with your family, just make sure you catch up with me on that work and that you provide a quality product. And that's what your boss will tell you in the real world too. So many jobs are remote today. So I feel like school's not doing the same thing. Like we're setting these expectations, but yet we're behaving differently as adults.
I'm sorry, but we're treating our kids like robots.
Yeah, and there's no need. Like, if I want to treat my students for the higher level job I hope I can help them achieve, part of that is a great deal of that is technology and remote working and working with people off-site or client management. And so, that's kind of the stuff that I will try and teach them in work product.
And that being said, so you heavily believe in virtual education.
Yeah, virtual, blended, creative. I think it's creative solutions because now we're getting to a time where we are, standardizing everything. Everybody's got a high stakes test or a high stakes evaluation.
Yes.
And I'm sure you really appreciate that. This as a student with specific needs, like I noticed, I was like, why is her book underlined? I'm like, oh my God, she used Siri for this. And I myself have told students that, like, I will dictate articles into Siri, and I've taught them how to do the same. Just as able-bodied students, these are things, they're good practices. So I believe, like, we have so much at our disposal via the internet. Like, I can learn anything right now. That why aren't we doing a better job kind of giving our students permission to kind of go crazy with their learning in that direction?
Well, I have a woman coming on, I believe, in December, who actually writes her books using a form of writing naturally speaking, and she's completely able-bodied, and people look at me like I'm crazy. That people say, well, man, that's fascinating. How did you do it? I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. You all have iPhones. You all want to write a book. Use the technology. Dawn is holding up an iPhone for those of you can't see. And so, use the technology that's given to you. You don't have to necessarily go. You can dictate a book in the parking lot of a soccer field. I don't care. But you want to write a book? Use that technology. Oh boy, don't get me started.
Well, that's so true because, I find that my best ideas come to me either while I'm driving to work, which I can't just stop and pull over. And I used to be really bad when I'd work for, I'd be driving and commuting all over and I'd have a little notepad on the top of my steering wheel and do all these things and write notes or in the shower or something like that. You always have these ideas when you have no paper. And so the iPhone solves that. You could write a book in the bathroom if you want. Totally.
Yeah.
This is my number 2 concentration book. Here it is.
Basically, you could do anything on the iPhone. And it's like, hello, now with QuickType, all I have to do is type one word, and it types a full sentence. And then it will come up with the cat or the dog, or it will guess 3 words it will predict 3 words that you automatically want to say. And so sometimes if Siri's not working or Siri's having a bad day, I use QuickType.
But do you ever wonder, I wonder, sometimes I'll be doing that, and I'll think of this strange word, a word I never say, like armadillo, and I'll type in an A, and armadillo will come up, and I'm like, that is too weird. Somebody's in my brain, and so I think that's kind of incredible that it knows.
Yes, it does. It does. And so, why book. Like,
Oh, are you there?
your camera got turned off.
Oh, here I am.
So then I turned.
I'm feeling oh,
Yeah. You can
okay.
still hear
Okay.
me. Good.
I can.
This is going to be audio, so people won't
Okay.
see the technical difficulties Skype is having. Thank you very much. But that being said, why didn't you write the book?
I wrote the book because it was a promise. I reconnected with a college friend who is an author. I didn't know he was writing at the time, but he's just a beautiful author. And he said, you need to write for real. And I said, okay, I'll write for real. And he helped me set up my blog. And I didn't know because again, he's just an amazing entrepreneur, a great writer, and he set my blog up so it was properly set up with the right, I bought the domain name, I did everything, and I just started writing on the blog, and then he said, now write a book. And I'm like, well, write a book about what? Well, I didn't know what I wanted to blog about, what to write about, and so these stories just were coming out little by little, and I started to see a theme, and I'm like, that's it. That's what I'm going to write about. And
Education.
yeah,
Wow.
well, but it couldn't just be education because when I started writing, it was a really frustrating time. It still is. It's a time where I went to education to save the world. It was going to be great. And in the beginning, people left us alone and we taught. And now everything has to be standardized. Like I have to redo all my data because my rigor wasn't high enough. All these measures and data. Like I'm not a bookkeeper or a statistician for a reason. And so this stuff, I'm a creative left-wing artist type, and I can teach at a very high level, but I just, when I'm bogged down with tracking and things that don't matter to students, it really makes me struggle. And I was clinically depressed about this. I thought, what's wrong with me? I'll drive to work and cry. I just can't, what is wrong with my mind? And as I started writing, I thought, oh my God, this is it. It's a grieving process. It's almost like the death of something I love because it's changed that much. And how do I reconcile that with the fact that I really love my kids? And when I'm looking at them and teaching, it's like a Hollywood movie. It's fun, and they're having fun and laughing and clapping and just learning. And then I deal with the red tape, and I just want to die. And so that book really helped me to put things in perspective. But more so, when I released it, people would say, oh my God, that's me too. I could have written that book. And so I realized, I wrote it because I wanted to be helpful, but I didn't expect to be that helpful. Like people would just be overwhelmed. And I thought, wow.
To be that helpful with my book either. I mean, my book, the original one, I Come a Win, has now been considered self-help. It was self-help at one point, and when I wrote that book, I wrote it because I had a turning point in my life, which I fully admit in I Come a Win, and I thought, okay. So, and after I wrote it, I did it, I published it, and then it just shot up from there, and then I have now, since then, done 2 co-authored books, and then a teen series, and then I'm officially working on my kids' book, which, granted, wasn't my idea. It was the kids' idea because they want a kids' book out of me. But, so, all that being said, because my all background is in education, education is getting tougher and tougher.
It sure is, and it's funny you said kids' book because we did a couple of kids' books too. We got a few more coming out because we just thought, these are pictures. We can do this. And there's a whole lot to literacy and early early reading, and I wanted to read and research that so before we did that, so I wouldn't just be putting out this book that everybody thought, well, you're messing up my kids' reading and they'll never read now. But yeah, teaching is getting to be a lot harder. And not harder, like my kids are great, and I'm an urban educator, so there are all the problems that come along with, making sure kids have what they need in their life before we can even start to teach.
Yeah.
but you're right. It is more and more of a challenge. And so I look at a lot of these groups that are on Twitter or groups that are really, really looking at solving some of the problems. And I think where I fall back is that there's a really good group, and you can find them on Twitter, especially in some of these professional learning networks. But a lot of like really rock star leaders, educational leaders trying to change education. But I think it's really hard because there's so much controversy at the top. Like I don't feel when I came into teaching, I felt like I had a great deal of control and autonomy. Now I feel like I have zero autonomy and control, and that really, curriculum has to be, everything has to be improved, and I almost wonder, why do I have all these degrees if I'm not able to use my expertise
Yes.
and show that in my
Yes.
tech jobs? My bosses will say, go away, come back with something, go do your job, and, don't bother me about it, do your job, and I do good work. And in my education job, I feel like it's,
Now
it's the
looking,
opposite.
now looking at us every 2 seconds, and it's like someone caught me today, and they started teasing me, and they know me really well because I'm lucky enough that I was a student at the school I'm teaching at now, and at a private country day in Aspen, Colorado, and someone looked at me and said, "You're on your phone as much as the kids." I'm like, and my explanation goes, "That's the only internet I have. How the heck are we supposed to research if they don't give us the tools to help these kids?"
I'm actually shocked that you don't have that resource. And the more I look at schools, even schools that I perceive to be schools, a little bit more well off, because that some schools are having these droughts. I mean, I make a joke that we have broken, blocked, and banned technology in most schools. And if you look at a really wealthy school, well, no parent would stand for less than acceptable workplace standard technology. If you look at the schools in need, a lot of them have grants, so they're able to get Chromebooks and things. But where we're lagging is the schools in the middle. And so the schools that can't quite get the communities to pay for technology or Chromebooks for every student, but they still have that need. And so for me, I lived in Russia, so I look at things as like, how do you get around this roadblock? And one of the ways for me is, our school, we're lucky enough to have BYOD, and not a BYOB, which you would think as a teacher you would need, but bring your own device instead of booze. Bring your own device. So you could have your iPhone, whereas in the past they would be taken away. And so a student could bring a tablet or a laptop. So for me, as long as I get a few kids with those and I have a couple of classroom stations, then I can make a research station and I can, kind of cycle kids through it. It's the classrooms that don't even have access to that that struggle. And even with that, schools a lot of times, because we have to keep our kids safe. You don't want porno, accidentally filtering through and any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so we have the federal regulations require schools to have a certain degree of filters, but some schools overdo it because they really don't understand what the federal law is. And so they will block everything. And then you're like, everybody watches YouTube. We need YouTube video. Like I'll have a documentary blocked. And so getting schools to understand like the best practice. And I could do this really cheap because as long as kids can bring their stuff and you unblock me and give me permission, I don't need to ask the taxpayers for a heavy load of cash. And I'm kind of cheap, so that's a win-win.
We have internet. I just don't think it's strong enough yet. I think the signal is weak, and they gave me a brand new laptop. The second day I go to use it, the laptop doesn't work. And
School technology, huh?
Yeah, and it's like you guys give me this stuff, expect me to use it, and then it doesn't work, and then your Wi-Fi isn't strong enough for me to do what I'm asked to do by my colleagues. And it's like, oh my God. And then, so I like it when teachers take things home, which I've been knowing to do myself, and they go, Win, why are you taking work home with you? I'm like, I have better internet at my house than I do here. So,
Oh, that's so true. I used to do a lot of work I come in early and do work at school.
yeah.
But then I realized I have better internet. So now I'm working and then I'm leaving for work. But you're right. It is so much easier to do stuff on my device at home. It
On
is.
your device at home. And now I want you to share that story that you shared with me in email about the kid in the IEP meeting who was a excellent writer but terrible speaker.
It was actually the opposite. So it was easier to deal with because we were in the IEP meeting and one of their goals and concerns was this kid's writing. And if I gave him a piece of paper, I'd look at this stuff and just say, huh? But he was the kid who could rock every oral presentation, and I do a lot of public speaking because I feel like this is a skill that, nobody likes to speak in public. So if I can teach them, that's a money skill. And so I said, listen, you are an amazing, amazing speaker, and writing is no different from speaking, except for you got to get it on that paper. And I held up my iPhone. I said, this is what I do, and I write articles this way. I will dictate them into the phone. I said, you have 2 iPhones. I see them. I try and tell you to put them away all the time. Take them out and use it for work. Dictate into it, generate some work. All you'll have to do then is on your note app, after you dictate it and Siri types it out for you, you can cut and paste it into your document, double space it, and put it in your correct format, and there you go. You have a 5-page paper in MLA format. Amen.
Yes.
And they're like, whoa. And that was actually before we were allowed to have phones in school. And I was teaching kids how to use their phones to dictate for that purpose, because it just, I hate writing. I won't do my work. I can't do it. And kids were failing because they feared the process of writing. So
Right.
teaching them to use adaptive technology, like, yeah, I'm using it in the real world, so it should be good. And so people with and without needs, like I had another student, one of the first ones, the one who sent me off on my journey to find tech people, he embarrassed me. He's like, Miss, why can't we use our phones? I'm like, because I get in trouble and you get in trouble and we all get in trouble. That was the answer, and that's not a very good answer, and so when I found the ed tech people, I didn't even know what the word ed tech was, but my entire vision for educational technology was this kid wanted to use his Samsung to take a picture of my notes on the board. And if you have not seen my handwriting yet, this is not a treat. I mean, there's a reason I type everything. It's just bad news. And so, I had no vision that ed tech would be this world that could defeat the boundaries of the classroom. And so, we just have to embrace that, I think.
So, 3 key points I want to make, and then I'll move on to the next question. For those of you who say, what did Dawn say when she said IEP? Well, IEP is an individualized education plan, and I fully say that in I win. So, if you guys who know me really well know that I fully say that and I win. I was on one in high school, and I was on one in college, and I am on a adaptive IEP in college the second time around. So, Dawn said IEP, which is Individualized Education Plans, which means you have, after school meeting with about 10 people, and yes, the child is there. Yes, I was at my own IEP meetings, and they go over the strengths, the weaknesses of the child, and then they go over the goals, and then they go over how to adapt those goals to a child. So thank you very much that Siri was now involved. And so I am, one of the other key points that Dawn said was ed tech. And what ed tech means is technology in the classroom. It's simple, and bring your own device is have the kids bring their own iPhones or iPads or whatever and use it sparingly for work purposes so they're comfortable at using their own devices. So I just wanted to clear up the teaching language Don and I were going back and forth about, because a lot of the common listeners don't understand the teaching language. You and I understand the teaching language like there's no tomorrow because we're so used to it.
Yeah, I think the basic thing is that we have a lot of technology that we use in the workplace, and we need to get that up to par in the schools. That's my thing. Like, if you ever went into your job and your boss didn't have internet, and then they said, "I'm sorry, put away your laptop," or they did this, you would think, "Oh my God, what is this person? We're not going to have any productivity." And so, to get the kids to do the same thing is really important. And as far as individual educational plans, this is federal law. So, students are required to have the supports that they need to stay in the classroom. And I think this is a really good thing. But it's not like you said, strengths and weaknesses. And I think that technology levels the playing field. So when you look at any student with a physical need, or with, say, autism is a big area where a lot of technology is very helpful. It's really enlightening to see that. And I don't think a lot of people realize that you can get that support in college, too. And that's a really key point you made,
Thank you.
You take longer to get from point A to point B. You need to have that time. And it should be common sense. A professor shouldn't need that paper, but it protects you.
Thank you. And so I've thought the education system for so long, it's not even funny anymore. I'm so used to it. Here's a good one for you. When I started my educational journey back in 1991, the Americans with Disabilities Act was still in draft form. Thank you very much.
Wow. When did that pass? Because I know that I made use of it in college as a grad student. I ruptured my Achilles tendon and was told that I had to repeat the semester and stay home. And I was on crutches, so, I probably, even on crutches after surgery, had far less, challenges to my mobility than you have. And I was going to be done with this. And so I was told, no, you have to, your liability, you have to stay home and repeat. But, I had a job and a family. I couldn't take that money and that opportunity to repeat. And so my first job in insurance, I did a great deal of legal research. And some of it was precedent setting, and some of it, it was just, that was part of my job, was researching situations. And so I said with politeness, I said, "I appreciate your helping me, but I need to tell you that this is something that's, I'm thank God I'm on crutches temporarily, but some people, this is permanent for them, and they work too. And the law protects us." And I referred to the section of the ADA that was, it was law at that point. And it was a difficult situation because, I felt like I had to fight the system. And so my student teacher mentor was an amazing man. He still is. He's still a teacher. And he said, "No, you will stick by my side and you will be fine. I will protect you." But I shouldn't have had to have an argument about that. So, I agree with you that people it should be common sense. You take a person and you help them with love,
You take a person, you help them with love. And that being said, and you don't have to be biased, what is your favorite book?
Oh, my favorite book? I don't know, because I so often read different, it's like when I'm in that mood, I will read different books. So I majored in Russian, so I did a great deal of Russian literature, and all of those books were, part of my heart and soul. But then I realized everybody dies in those books. They're not very happy. And then I started reading a great deal of my friends' books. The author that started me writing, his name is Kamal Ravikant, and I really love his books. And I read a lot of those. And then now today I'm reading a lot of of inspiration, leadership, things that will just teach me and make me better, something that I didn't know. Like, I'll just start reading a whole bunch of books about, one aspect of technology or finance or, whatever it is that I want to be learning much, much more about at this time, and I'll just dive into it and read.
So you use books as education tools.
Yeah, because for me, the last 2 careers I've been in, I have not learned, education requires us to have a degree, but in all my consulting kind of freelancing and job 2s that all teachers have, and all of those, I've learned entire careers by either following really, really smart people, learning from them, or just reading. And that's beautiful. Like, teachers shouldn't be threatened by all this. We should be those guides that get students past their roadblocks, and they can learn,
Hello.
So that's what I've been doing. I read a lot, and so sometimes I read a lot of nonfiction, but I just try and read anything I feel passionate about that'll make me better.
I mean, you're pulling stuff out of my book that it's like, yeah, we're having a teacher-to-teacher conversation, and for those of you who do not know my background in education, and I'm actually honored to interview another teacher today. And so, and as I was saying earlier, I was laughing out loud at her book title, and we got into that. But what is your favorite chapter in your own book?
My own book? This copy, by the way, I found some mistakes in it because I learned about editing process. So I have all the mistakes penciled in that I had to go back and fix. This is my my symbolic copy. I think for me, the barista chapter, I think that might be my favorite. It's the chapter about, I actually spent 3 years working at an amazing startup out of San Francisco, and I worked remote on the East Coast, and I worked with this incredible team of people, and we were just expanding a product, and there was some education section to it. It was Learnist, and it was just an amazing group of people with a great founder, and I didn't know what Silicon Valley was. So I ended up in this job without really knowing what Silicon Valley was. It was a friend of a friend, and I looked at his site, and I said, oh, well, you should do this, this, this. And I had so many ideas, and I really loved it, and eventually they hired me. So I didn't, it was just this job that was amazing for me. I worked with a great team, and then I went out there for an event, and I was working out of the office. And I looked around the office, and for anybody working in tech, this is pretty typical. You go into the office, and it's all very, very hipster and quirky and cool. And there's like this band room over there, and these amazing seats, and all the computers are out and open, and everybody shares stuff, and there's a whole refrigerator with beers and kombucha and tea, and a barista comes in. It's like, wow. And so I'm coming from a background.
A barista. You
said a barista was there.
Barista.
There was a barista there and like a masseuse sometimes. And so I'm like, wow, it was kind of like I died and went to this surreal, it was not quite heaven because I didn't see God, but I saw like all these luxuries of life. And everybody's working, they're doing their thing. And so I was staring because, I mean, in job 1, I couldn't get a box of paper. Let me tell you, it was an act of Congress. I had to fill out 3 papers to get 1 slice of paper, and it was just a nightmare. And so I'm asking my friend, I'm like, how do you get a barista, man? I can't even get, how do you do that? And so he explained this to me, and this was explained twice by somebody in the 2001 tech bubble. And this friend, he said, listen, man, all tech people, you can't hire an engineer. Engineers are like scarce. They're an endangered species. Everybody needs to have really great employees at their startup. And so we have to offer perks. And my first friend's company, they had like this guy who would go shopping and bring food and hammocks and foosball. But at this company, they had the barista come in once a week, and they were really nice to their people, and food would be delivered and stuff, and then people would work a lot. He said, I need to compete with a big company. How do I compete with Google? I have to feed them once in a while and be really nice. And then I was thinking to myself, so that barista became a symbol of like, and there was a kegerator too, and everybody had beer in there, like you could go out to a working lunch and have beer, and I don't drink, but it was a symbol. It became a symbol of freedom, and I started noticing I was obsessing over the beer and coffee like this crazy woman, thinking, wow, we don't get that. You know, I have this Keurig in the corner of my classroom, and I will stock it up because I feel like as a 10th step teacher, I should pay for these things. And I will let, you know, people come in, the only time they talk to each other is around a cup of coffee. But there's
Yeah.
no barista in education. And what if we treated teachers or classroom teachers, gave them that autonomy and had those perks?
I knew
Like,
you were
would
going to
they
say
be
that.
rock stars? Would they, you know, if we got a barista or the equivalent in education, would it fix education? I think it would.
Yes, yes, I agree. I definitely, I definitely agree. And now I am in maybe this summer. I am going to write a book, another book called Look Up, and it's teaching respect on the iPad because I walk into a common classroom that everyone uses, and kids are sitting on the ground on iPads. They don't even look up to see me in the room and say hi. It drives me nuts. And
See,
so I think
I think that's a good idea. I think also that we are looking at a generational shift. So when I look at the way my kids interact, and I'm kind of like in the middle because I am kind of forward thinking, but when I look at my mom, who's like, do not text around, you know, you can't be texting or on the phone or doing things when you're in interpersonal contact because that would be rude to her. When you look at somebody in my generation where we'll text and talk and, you know, there's certain boundaries, but we were very integrated and maybe I'll get to your text now or in a couple minutes, but it's all pretty quick. When we look at the kids though, they're very continuous. Like, that's an extension of their real person relationships. My son will say, Mommy, this is my friend. I'm like, that's some dude on a gaming device that you have no idea who he is. But how many of us do the same thing? So I think that's, you know, teaching interpersonal skills is going to be really cool. But that it's an entirely different animal for them.
yeah, I need to write this book. I need to write a book about technology
But
and
now, what would you
using it.
say? I'm
And
curious. What would you tell them?
when a person, well, for one, when a person walks into the room, at least acknowledge the person. and, then, and then you can go, then you can go back to the iPad game. But I don't think technology, at at least with the educational aspect, I don't think technology is necessarily censored to the iPad itself. I mean, they might put safe games on it, but the tech person is not walking around every 2 seconds to see what's going on the iPad. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's a big piece of this. And I, as a bad parent, I ran into this once, and I do this, you know, pretty much. I do an awful lot with apps and tech. And so my son was telling me about his friend, and his friend, it was a chat app that I did not realize that I had not blocked. And so you push the button, and anybody random will pop up, and the idea is that you can meet random people from all over the world. But think about this from a parent standpoint. When your person is just meeting random people from all over the world, they're not all good. And I'm like, oh, I forgot to block this. And so it was a learning moment for me because I think that he probably ran into one or two not so savory people. And I said to him, hey, did any people say anything inappropriate? And in fact, one did. And one said, well, one asked me, and I'm like, okay, stop right there. But we had a moment. I said, well, you know, sometimes people are going to be bad. And my son is 8. So you need to make sure that you tell mommy, or you just click out of things right away if we make a mistake. And I think that's part of the culture of teaching them. And I think at the high school level, because they're all in technology 24 hours a day, I tell them stories about people I've seen who have lost job opportunities, who have had their companies ruined because the technology, the image they had online, their personal brand
And
was not good.
I have, my mom always used to say, and now this is true, my mom always used to tease me and say, employers look at your Facebook. Well, now that statement is true. And I had a friend whose son is disabled, and she was looking at hiring a assistant, and assistant for herself, not for herself, and she said, I looked at this woman's Facebook profile and saw one picture of her doing something personal, and thought, I'm not going to hire her. So basically, that person lost a job opportunity with my friend because of a Facebook profile. And so that's why I'm going to write this book about educational technology and tying them with looking up and teaching respect while using technology, because I just feel like it's going downhill.
I would agree that that's something that should be, it's not just a lesson that somebody teaches at school. That is a continual operation. So I try and teach my kids. One day I did a lesson, and there used to be this site online that would pull from your social media and make like this graphic. So it was like almost like a resume, but it had all the things from your social media, and it just magically put it together. So I did this with my kids, and I said, listen, I want you to predict on which social media will you see me with a beer. And I asked a couple questions, and they're like, oh, this was definitely a good lesson. So they're like, Facebook. I said, no. Twitter, no. Instagram, no. So we were going through all this. I said, the answer is nowhere, because it doesn't exist. So when I'm looking at telling them to clean up their social media, the opposite, the flip side of that is use it effectively to create their brand. Like, I know what kind of job I want, and then those are the types of posts I bring to the table to attract people. So I pushed the button. I said, I'm so confident that you're not going to find anything controversial on any of my social media. I'm going to push this button, and it's going to compile, and it's going to show on that smartboard. And so I did, and sure as day, it showed every address I'd ever had. It showed all my education, and it pulled all my photos. And out of those photos, they were all professional, except for there was this one where my son was balancing as many blocks as he could on my head.
Yeah.
Probably not the most professional one that I put in a work resume, but not controversial. So teaching them how to craft and create that brand is super, super that's really a good message for them.
Yeah.
I think you should definitely do that.
I'm holding, my fans holding me to it, and Dawn is holding me to it now, because I need to get this off. I need to get the book on the iPad out, and I need to get it done, because it drives me nuts, and me being in education drives me nuts. So, anyway, who would be one, I guess you can say, teacher who you would like to gain knowledge from? And it doesn't have to be in the past, or it doesn't have to be someone famous, or it doesn't have to be someone in the past, or it doesn't have to be someone famous, just someone you want to sit with and gain their knowledge from.
Well, that's a hard one. I was thinking about that, and I think like the book thing, I could never. I'm not ADHD. I actually had myself tested for fun, but I find like every experience I have is something I can learn from, and so every like I feel like I'm learning right now, and I feel like I'm learning from everybody I partner with and work with. That for all my projects, I'm just so fascinated by whoever's in front of me. I think that's, I really like people. So whoever I'm with, I usually find that I'm very fascinated about the story they're telling me, and then I want to learn about that. And so I'm doing some consulting work and listening to the stories of the people I'm working with. I'm just amazed. And then doing some other projects that I'm working on, I'm always amazed, and I always want to learn a lot more. So I think and you can learn about life from anybody. I always feel like when I watch people treat other people, like if they're out, people say if you don't treat the wait staff well. I used to wait in restaurants, and that says a lot about you. But I feel like if you always go and learn from people, whoever you're with, it's a gift, and I don't think a lot of people use that. So,
Yes.
can I answer that, or is that cheating?
Yeah, you can answer that as that. So you won't give me a specific person. It's just people in general.
Absolutely, because I am fascinated by most people, and I found that as I get older, I'm able to find the good people for me and the not so good for me people, and kind of gravitate toward people who are either much smarter than me, more inspirational, really, really kind or generous or fun, or like just spending time and shifting. I used to always want to make sure all of my relationships were good, and sometimes I now know that it's okay to leave some behind, that they're not serving me in a productive way, they're not healthy for me. And so when I find those people that I know I'm going to learn from, or just enjoy in life, it's a smaller circle, I think, because I want to make sure that I'm building healthy relationships. I didn't always do that. So
Exactly. Well, from one educated to another, I wish you the best of luck with the middle of the school year, almost to the end, thank you, almost to 2016. And I hope you guys tune in to another fabulous episode. I'm sorry this was a little bit off the cuff, off my normal episode, but because it's an educator to another educator, we kind of had to talk education. And so I hope you guys enjoy the episode. And the episode will be in iTunes. It will be all over the place, actually. I'm switching. Speaking of technology, I'm actually switching systems as of tonight because I need it in more more powerful capacity. Let's just say that, because I need my story and I need your story and I need all my educator stories to be put in a more powerful capacity. So, those of you who are going to listen on iTunes, please leave a review. You don't have to be nice about it, people. Just leave a review. You don't have to give me 5 stars all the time. Just an honest review, thank you very much. And to those of you who pick up I Come Win, all my books can be found on Amazon. Leave a review on those. Again, it doesn't have to be 5 stars and growing. It just has to be a review, so it makes it easier for people to find.
cool. That's excellent.
That is excellent.